Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here this afternoon for this session. So we're going to begin and try to look at the history of arts education in Penang, which has a long history and many, many projects. So for this first session, we have Janet on my left and Catherine on my right. So we'll start, Janet, with you, with talking about how did you how and why did you start TIE YTP in Penang? Uh, Before this, you were doing the work in KL. So was this the first entry into arts education in Penang? And what was the background?
Okay, it was actually, I did a sabbatical in USM studying TIE for 5 months in the UK. And I think that triggered up thoughts about the possibility of using TIE as a form of as an educational form lah, in Penang. But definitely there's a connection between the sabbatical research and the TIE. But the first one, which is called Stop Look Go, was actually part of a research project with Sweden, Australia and Malaysia. And the topic of the research was drama and educational drama and conflict exploration. And Ida Reza was deeply involved in that research together with Sui Bing. But the end part of that 5-year research was actually Stop Look Go as well. So it was a combination of the two lah.
Okay, just one factual question. By this time, you were already teaching in USM, but when did you start teaching in USM? Year?
1984.
And then went on sabbatical?
1995. I hope that's the correct year.
And came back?
In the same year.
And from 95 to 98?
I was doing the research with Sweden and Australia.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, so Catherine, how did you get involved in this project? Don't start by saying, I can't remember anything.
No, actually, I do remember this. If I memory serves me correctly, I happened to be in Joanne's house at that time, and she said that she had a meeting with this funny neighbor of hers.
And is Joanne?
Okay, so Joanne was a good friend of mine, and who also then got involved in Stop Look Go, and so we became co-actors together. So I was in Auntie Vim and Uncle Julian's house, and I think it was by chance when you had set up a meeting to come to meet Joanne, I happened to be there. I got excited by the project because I was taking a gap year off from school, from university. And so, and that's how it took off, because I was free and I liked the sound of it, and I somewhat did some acting and dancing, prior to this anyway, so it sounded fun.
Okay. And this was your first involvement in this kind of young people's arts education?
Yes.
And then from this one, you stayed on to do several projects with Janet over the years.
Yes.
And why, what were the experiences that led you to keep coming back and stay on for over the years for several projects?
So although I had been involved in performing arts prior to meeting Janet, the angle of what we were doing and how I was being asked to move my body and do things was totally different and new for me, and I think that was exciting for me, and I the content and the objective of what was trying to be done was very meaningful to me. So that's why I kept going.
So can you elaborate a little bit on how it was different from what you had done before? How, for example, you just said how you were being asked to move your body compared to maybe dance lessons you had had before, or
correct, yeah, or theater in school or whatever. So I think I remember being in Dewan Siri, and it was a nighttime rehearsals, and for the first time I had met Ida, and she completely blew my world in how she took a movement and she exaggerated it, or either sped it up or exaggerated it, and And so it was such an interesting process for me to see that. Was, you know, everything we had done prior to that was very, you know, it was steeped in realism, and now it was just being stretched and pulled, and it was just really, it completely blew my mind.
And were you involved in the research for the content?
Yeah, so I remember going to school, so we were, so all the actors had to get involved in the research, and so we would go around the schools. Of course, my handicap was my language, because we were visiting all the local schools, and, you know, the medium was mostly Bahasa. So that was unfortunately a big handicap for me, but you know, I was really, because I was a sociology major, and so this whole idea of conflict resolution and emotional intelligence really were just really up my alley. So I was very interested. So I had to constantly get things translated, but yeah, so it was just too bad I couldn't get more involved in the research.
Janet, can you talk a little bit about that research process and how the participants were involved in the process? Because you had been doing the research already for about 3 years on conflict resolution through the Swedish project, right? So when it came to Stop, Look, Go and, you know, the others, how were the participants involved in the research?
Okay, so there are two types of participants, because there were the actors and then there were the children as well. The children who are actually going to be audiences.
And then there were the facilitators as
And then
well.
no facilitators. So
But like
actor,
Ida as choreographer?
yeah, Ida was a choreographer only for Stop, Look, Go.
Okay.
It was a very movement-oriented piece.
Okay, so what
Um,
what I'm thinking of is the different levels of participation
Patient.
of the different types of people in that whole process.
Okay, unfortunately, I don't have a memory of Ida choreographing this. So Ida, I hope you can fill us in on this
We
later.
will go, yeah, we'll ask Ida later.
But the type of research, okay, so from 95 to 97, most of the research was actually on whether the educational drama process itself could lend itself or had parallels with the process of conflict exploration and conflict handling. So the normal curve that you have for a drama could possibly be the same curve that you have when you experience a conflict. It goes to a peak and then you try to resolve it. So, but it was very theoretical research, but we were trying to match it to the educational drama process. But by the time we came to Stop, Look, Go, which was towards the end of the research, we already knew our conflict theory quite well. So we wanted to see whether we could teach conflict literacy through Stop, Look, Go. So Stop, Look, Go was actually to get children to understand the stages of conflict and to actually learn how to handle conflict by stop at the correct point, think, and then take action. So that's what Stop, Look, Go means. And they used a red card to stop and a green card to, yeah, you know, now that I've calmed down, I can go on with the action. And it also had an element of forum theatre from Boal. So we could stop the play and, you know, they could give, I mean, the audience could give solutions. But in terms of the research, what was interesting is all the scenes, the actors would go into schools and cull actual problems from the students, and those problems would then be recreated or devised into scenes by the actors. And that happened for Stop, Look, Go. For Okay Ta Okay, where it was pitched at primary school children and it was on sexual abuse. So the first one was more on relationships, uh, teenage relationships, as well as teenage problems like dropping out of school early or truancy or going to work early, you know, going to work before you graduated from school. But Okay Ta Okay was for very much younger children, so we couldn't do that kind of research with young children because it's too traumatic. But WCC, the organizer of Okay Ta Okay, actually had done a very serious book with rapists, interviewing rapists who were already incarcerated in jail. And these rapists had case studies of why and how they committed rape. And we used those those case studies. The book was fresh out by WCC. We used those case studies to build the scenarios.
Okay. Okay, let's just move on to more personal experience. So, Kath, can you talk about personal experiences in these programs or in these projects, both positive and less positive, that have sort of left a mark on you, stayed with you, influenced your life and/or practice?
I mean, I think overwhelmingly it was a much more positive experience than negative. It it created. I think it really tapped on my whole alternative outlook on many things in life, and I think it just swayed me away, and it opened up so many more doors of expression and understanding just different forms, from dance to theatre to speech, and it opened up so much. I think it was really a broadening experience for me, and um, I had never seen anything like this done before, and until today I still don't hear about these things happening, and it was such a rare gem to have been a part of this, to really penetrate schools and really understand, at some level anyway, problems and issues that these children were facing, and to be given opportunity for them to like through our work being able, and I remember them being so involved. So we would be performing, and then okay, stop, and then it's like red card, green card, go up, and there was so much interaction going on, and there was really a chance for them to reflect on situations and respond to it. And I just can't imagine that sort of thing happening, and just that time spent doing that was just really incredible.
How old were you at the time?
18, 19, yeah.
Looking back now, would you look at the whole thing as more art or more education? I'll tell you why I'm asking this question, because in the roundtable that we had in KL, Janet at some point talked about how she had this discussion with, because her early work, Christian Jit gave her a lot of advice, and she used to talk to Christian. And at some point, when she talked to Christian, and Christian asked her why she was doing it, and she said for her it was all about education. And she used a wonderful phrase. She said, "At that moment, the wall fell between me and Christian, because Christian was very interested in the idea that art was the main thing that could lead people into a different experience." Hence, I've come to this question of, looking back now for you, was it the educational aspect of it that had more potency and has left the greater impression of you? Was it the art, or is it impossible and it's a strange question and it's a combination of both?
Yeah, very difficult, because it's really, because we were working in school, and I was, you were going through this process of working with children and drawing out things from them, and so for me it was highly educational through arts. I felt it completely met its objective of being theatre and education, but no doubt the art of it, and I wasn't involved in the other two projects, but for Stop Look Go, it was so fanciful and so fantastical in what we did, and so the artistic element of it was also very strong, and it really had a huge impact on me. Yeah.
Okay, Janet, looking back now, although you said that already, looking back now at the projects, was the art more important, the education more important, both?
I think if you look at the three projects progressively, in Stop Look Go, I would say it was 50% art and 50% education. So I think the art element was we were really picky about the stylization of the movements, the songs. We had Joanne and Catherine and all were singing a lot of songs. It was almost like a semi-musical. And then, of course, the design was like out of this world lah, because Kung Yu did the sets and the costumes. And we spent a lot of time actually on the artistic side. But of course, there was that whole research thing, which took months. But Okay Tak Okay was really an education project because of the entry of WCC, and it was meant to be a highly educational project. There was hardly any art element other than the drama training for Okay Tak Okay. Respect was like completely educational. I mean, it was serious sex education, you know.
But you were still using Artisla to draw the, to draw some of the parts of the body and all from what I read.
That's why it's called arts education, or theatre in education. So it's a tool. The difference is using it as a tool.
All right. Okay, let's just go to the last question, which is, I'll start with you, Catherine. Any takeaways, meaning attitudes, practices, skills, knowledge that have impacted your career, as in now? Or, no, I mean, it can be career or as your life as a woman, wife, mother, child.
Well, I think definitely discipline, just being, we had a very strict drama master, so rehearsals were taken very seriously, and there was no play, mess around, we weren't treated like kids. It was, we were sworn at, we were expectations were high. Things weren't done well, we would do it again and again and again until it was perfected. And so as a group, there was growing unity within the group, and it was just, and I think that was hugely invaluable for me. So whatever little performance or little anything I'm involved in now, I feel like I carry that same expectation to anyone I'm working with, whether it be it children or adults. So I don't know if it's good or bad, and I don't know whether that already kind of naturally presided in me anyway. But anyway, it just gelled with me, and I think that definitely made an impact. You said something else, I can't remember, but it triggered something. What was the question again?
Things that have impacted
me.
Either your career or just your life as...
Yeah, and I remember using some of that. I remember we walked through a lot of like warm-ups and voice training and physical, and I remember using that at the Spice Garden very early days when we had like corporate groups coming in, and they wanted some like some facilitation to do some games and all that. So I remember I pulled a lot of what was used or learned in TIE to do this. So, and just kind of and so whenever the corporate groups come, I would always think about, in the early days when I had more time to do it, to think about how to use their bodies in nature, or kind of this instead of the emotional quotient, and to think about the green quotient and how bodies and people can learn and respond to being in a natural environment. So I was kind of trying to take all this and kind of mesh it all together. But in those days, I had more capacity and time to do this. So yeah, it did. I think it made a huge impact.
Do you think, last question, sorry, I think we're almost...
Can I just interject? Did this introduce you into dance? Did this particular one also?
This nature, dance of this nature, yeah, definitely.
But you had dance training before?
Yeah, because I had come from the ballet, tap, modern, background. So this completely shifted me, and I never looked back. I never looked back again at the more, yeah.
Just one very quick last question for Catherine. So this system of making young people do things over and over again, and getting it very precise, do you think it's a good way to work with young people? Because sometimes we've been accused of like traumatizing children with this system of repeat it, do it, get it precise, and we as like people like Janet and me shout and scream a lot. So is it a good system? We ourselves want to reflect on these systems, so we're wondering, how many children have we traumatized and ruined for life?
Well, I think it worked for me, so and it's true because subsequently along the way, I met parents as I grew up. I'm meeting parents with young children. They're like, "This is crazy. This gamelan workshop. They're just getting screamed at all the time. Withdraw." But at the end of the day, I mean, I think there's value in just being driven through, and then you see the result of what you've worked for, and it's so satisfying and it's so meaningful, and you form a relationship with what you've done, the people you've met, the content, so much. It's invaluable. So I think it's difficult, but you just stick it out.
Janet, any last comments?
Just that I think this whole series, because it was so connected to research and also working with NGOs, which have an agenda, and also the research agenda and the NGO agenda, makes this particular program really different from the other programs, in that we're actually working for outsiders. And it's the first time that we have like a solid partnership with an outside partner that's almost an equal partner. And their contribution actually to the projects is massive in terms of content development. Because TIE also has other materials that teachers use prior to the performance and all that. So the partners are very solid in comparison to other programs where we are controlling the program.
I think that's just as a final comment. I think that's, when I was reading through the material in prep, interesting about all the Penang work is that involved so many partners. WCC, Penang Educational Consultative Council, I mean, just the whole list of partners, schools, MOE, Ministry of Education, Welfare Department, really, really a lot, which I feel is interesting in itself. That's something, maybe we need to talk about and look at, that these strategic alliances with different organizations, which really then, just the reach and the impact, and then the both-way feed into the work becomes very interesting and very different from, I think, the kind of work that was done by you in KL. Thank you very much. Session 1.